This is a 1 terabyte micro SD card that I found on a website called Joom.com. And in case you can't tell, this is clearly a scam. 1 terabyte SD cards, especially for cameras like mine, go for upwards of $100, $200, $300 for a decent one, especially if you want to do 4K footage. And for this, being $9, there's no way this can exist. So first off, $9 is pretty much what we're looking at here. And just to look around, let's see the description here. Just to look at this, it's going to be very interesting. Transmission rate, USB 3.0. That usually would be like class 10, which is 10 megabytes per second, all that stuff. Capacity, all this stuff will be very interesting. Look, I'm really impressed though at just some of the stuff that it's advertising here. Like your work voltage, okay. The read-write speed is 80 megabytes per second, so just keep that in mind when we go through and start testing the actual speed that it is. According to this, it says it's class 10, high endurance SAMDisk, but in reality, it is only 80 megabytes per second. I'm really interested to see what we actually get. Oh, and by the way, in case you don't know, if this turns out to be a scam, we actually end up removing it from the website. I've done a little partnership with Joom, and basically, since it is Christmas break at the time of this video, some of this stuff has been a little difficult to get done. But basically, when they all get back in, if I post a video that turns out to be a scam, it actually ends up getting removed from the entire website. So that's another good thing that we're doing, because a lot of people go down in the comment and they're like, why are we giving money to scammers? Well, actually, we're helping clean them off, at least on this channel, off some of the websites on the internet. So let's actually go through and order this, get this in the mail, and see what actually shows up. This is a little SD card. And it looks like it came in this kind of burrito thing. And I mean, the packaging is any indication of what we're getting. I think they've already spent like $2 of this $9 that we spent on this on just the packaging. And then we have a little Ziploc bag. Surprisingly nice quality Ziploc bag. And here is the micro SD card. So what we'd expect, I was actually just working with one of these with my 3D printer back here. I'm reorganizing my room, so it's obviously much smaller than the normal SD card, all stuff you're familiar with. The one thing I will notice though is there's a lack of branding on this. You should be able to see this in the B-roll. But there's a lack of any branding whatsoever on this, which usually is a quite bad sign. There's also like some type of serial number on the back, as well as 1,024 gigabytes on the front. I definitely would be saying this is not... Anyway, I'd be willing to say this is not a terabyte. I would also say that most SD cards would advertise or put a terabyte, 1 terabyte on the front, rather than putting it in gigabytes. That's just another thing I noticed. I definitely do think it is quite odd. But for the most part, there is some serial numbers on the back, which I want to just Google real quick and see what they actually end up meaning. I wasn't actually too sure what I was expecting to find, but absolutely nothing. It's been a while since I've Googled something. Actually, no, it hasn't. The last graphics card video we did was that. But it's been a while since I've Googled something, and literally Google says, I have no idea what you're talking about. So the serial number on here doesn't exist. It's made up out of thin air. So it'll definitely be interesting when we try to see what this actually is. So the first thing that I want to do is just throw this into a computer and see how much it actually says it has in raw storage. And then we're going to try to upload my entire meme collection, my PC Master Race meme collection, onto this little SD card. It's a couple terabytes, so definitely make sure that we see how well this holds up. Now, you know, for this test, this little benchmark that we're going to be doing today, you need to make sure you have a couple things. You need to have a good solid piece of storage device to store your entire meme collection. So for me, this terabyte should be good. It'll probably only cover about 1/8 or even maybe a 16th of my entire meme collection that I have stored. But for the most part, we're going to, upload a good part of our meme collection to this little SD card and see how much of it actually gets retained. Of course, we don't want to lose any of our precious memes, but for the most part, I have a feeling we're not really going to have any left. We might even not even get 8 gigabytes worth of memes, and if I don't stop dropping this as well. So let's go real quick, plug this in, see what we got. So here is our trusty little SD card combination. First thing I'm going to do is, of course, just put this in. We'll see what we actually end up with. I've got a little task manager, or I guess file explorer all ready to go, and there it is. So it says 99 gigabytes, like we'd expect, big surprise there. It's going to say that. I do want to point out an interesting fact. First off, this has the full entire terabyte worth of storage on it. That means that there is absolutely no room for partition or for file indexing of the drive. So for example, my 512 gig, I guess Western Digital black drive has only about 464 gigabytes actually usable. That means that the rest is used for storing the locations of the file on the disk so that you know where to read from them. So I'm basically just going to take all my raw footage from my camera, just start chucking it at it. Basically what we'll do is we'll use it kind of like an indicator. I have some gigabyte files that will basically just take those and kind of see how many of those gigabyte files that we can actually stack up to kind of get a rough estimate of how much it's actually retaining. Obviously some files you'll be able to access, which likely means that that is actually readable and accessible storage, so it successfully stored that. But then there's also going to be those files that are just completely corrupt, that says doesn't exist or something like that, and then we'll use those as kind of an indicator to guess how much of that actual storage is retained. My guess is, as I said, maybe about like 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, 4 gigabytes. I'd be surprised with 4 gigabytes since this is a much lower cost scam, or this really costs a very small amount. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. So let me just get this all ready, set up. I'll start adding some files, some indicator files, and then we'll go from there. So I've selected actually a video of me working on my Cybertruck graphics card. And I've selected that. We're going to actually start chucking this at this poor little SD card. And then we're going to go through and see actually how it goes. So let's get this going, shall we? I'm going to put that over there, wait for that to copy. We have surprisingly 20 megabytes per second of speed. I'm actually kind of pretty impressed there. I was expecting something a lot lower, especially with the, I don't know, $9 SD card. But let's just get this thing, wait for this to finish up writing, and then we'll get started from there. So, as you can see, I think we can access the file. Does that mean that it's not even a gigabyte? Does that mean that the literal total storage file is not even a gigabyte worth of storage? So as you can see, we've got about 1 gigabyte's worth of storage, and it doesn't even finish up with 1 gigabyte. So let's actually figure out what level and cost this scam is, because this file is slightly more than a gigabyte. So interesting to see how much does a gigabyte SD card cost with the additional work of, 20 megabytes, looks like 10 megabytes per second read-write speeds, cost of shipping, all that stuff. So let's calculate that out. So it looks like on the internet, with the higher profit margins of the internet, you're looking at right around $5 for the SD card. Now, I don't think they actually paid $5. I think that they probably had something along the lines of some way of getting a bunch of them in bulk. They probably paid $3 or something like that a piece. And I'd be willing to bet that's actually where the $3 went in your purchase of $9. But for me, to go one step farther, we're also going to see if we can calculate, based off of the reviews and stuff on the website, how much of that they actually get to keep, because they don't want to have to spend a bunch of money to ship it to you and then you right away go, oh yeah, it's a scam, and then they have to pay that money back out. They want to make you think that it works for long enough. Now, this is actually a really poorly put together scam, because not only have they done something where you don't even have a gigabyte's worth of storage, this is 2019, almost 2020. 2020 is like in a week. It is literally going to be pointless if they plug it in your computer and the first thing they do is try to download a video game and it doesn't even work on the SD card. That's not really the profit margin you're looking for. Now, in an ideal world, if you were going to do this scam, at least make it more difficult, which I probably shouldn't be saying this because, well, you guys are the people that are watching this, and the scammers probably don't want to watch these videos because they get busted. So, speaking of that, you probably have like a 32 gigabyte bit of actual storage on this SD card. And that way, when people went and uploaded their games, they'd have that 32 gigabytes worth so that they at least have a little buffer between the time that they get the SD card, have their games, thinks it works, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work at the end of that 32 gigabytes. They have to have a little bit of a buffer time to wait out the return period. Now, if someone's really, I don't know, a media user like myself, for example, I have some GoPros that use these micro SD cards. I would go through a terabyte probably in about the course of a month. And now obviously it would be very difficult if the return period was maybe only a month and that person would have to go through maybe about half of that to a fourth of that to an eighth of that total storage. If they really made this like a $50 SD card for a terabyte, they could really put about 128 gigabytes worth of storage, actual storage on this SD card. And in that time, it would be very, very, very difficult for people to actually determine the raw storage on it. So that being said, let's calculate how much they actually earned based off the reviews, shipping costs, all that stuff to figure out how much that $9 they actually got to keep. So, I was just thinking about this actually. It says on at least this one, the one that I purchased, that 124. Does that mean megabytes, kilobytes, gigabytes? Because we obviously did experience the amount of about roughly a gigabyte. But when we go look at the SD card, it has the gigabyte logo on ours. Not to mention, it is not Samsung. It is not high endurance. So therefore, it's quite interesting to see this. Very, very interesting. So not only is our SD card very blank, looks like it's got a layer of, I would consider, paint over the top, trying to prevent us from actually seeing what the original one was. Very interesting to notice the fact that there are no reviews on here. That's because I'd like to figure out and get you guys informed on scams before they become a problem. This actually, oddly enough, $9, which I think this is advertising it as a megabytes, when in reality, they have gigabytes on here, and that was my understanding. So the final thing that I want to do in today's video is actually go through and run Crystal Mark on the disk itself to get the actual raw speeds. This is a great test to see what the sustained speeds are on the disk. Now this will be really influential, I really can't talk, and how we determine what the actual raw speed is to determine a matching disk. So this will be interesting to see what they actually have put in value-wise into the scam disk. So I'm going to run this test on the entirety I'm going to run the entire test also on the entirety to pretty much go through and see. Let me check to make sure what disk this is. This is F. So we're going to run, it's not even showing up. What the heck? F. There we go. So we're going to run this little test on the entirety of the disk to see what actually is retained. I'm going to be interested to see what even is retained, since we've already done some testing and determined that the fact is the disk itself isn't even pulling any information back out correctly. I'd be interested to see what this even comes up with, because it's definitely going to be able to write a bunch of stuff, but I'd be surprised if the read just fails altogether. I'd be really surprised, actually. It's done. Guess what? I can't believe it. And what does it say? Big surprise here. We've got about 11 megabytes per second read and about 12 write, right? You think, right? You think it's going good, and then you get down even farther and, yeah, it just can't write anymore. I was totally expecting this to happen. So not only that, but like the larger stripes and stuff are just not happening. So that has been very interesting. I'm also curious to do a quick breakdown on the total cost that we've got here. So real quick, costs, what are we looking at? So first off, we've got ourselves the lovely little cost of the SD card. It is probably around maybe $4 to $3 is from what we found online. So about a gigabyte SD card with these speeds costs about maybe $4. Next up, we got the cost of shipping, and shipping a little envelope about across from, I guess, China to where I live on the East Coast took probably around maybe $1 to $2 since it wasn't a large package. Next up, we have the cost of the research and development, which probably was maybe $1, maybe 50 cents, even less probably, just because of the mass they probably produced. So, and obviously the advertising and all the dealing of refunds and stuff probably pays into about $1. So they might have gotten, what does that calculate out to? We'll just say that's 3, 2, and 2. So that really leaves them, what, $7? So really that's kind of, they're getting about $2 profit margin on this. Now how they could change this up a little bit, of course, is advertise, with a little higher price, and of course have a little bit more storage in there, so you'd have to cut down a little bit. You'd get a lot less refunds or returns in the time period, and then you'd also could charge a higher price as well. Still, I think at $9, it was clearly obvious it was a scam. Now, I'm not trying to give constructive advice, but you should also just kind of pay attention, kind of tell you their mindset, help you guys, guess kind of what's going on to figure out what is the mindset that they're in. Because I like doing these research and investigative videos. It's kind of an interesting thing to go through and actually see what they are doing and how they are making their money from this. And obviously, I think for this SD card, since only like maybe 15 were sold, I don't think that it was much profit for them, and they'll probably actually cost more of their time to go through and actually do all the work of posting it for it just to get taken down and also go through and just end up really disappointingly ended. So, in the long run, are these scams profitable? Some are, some aren't. I definitely think that the SD cards are one that's been overused a lot, so I don't think that they should be such a big issue. But for the most part, I would say that these scams, as I said, are pretty well known. So just keep an eye out. If you see something that looks too good to be true, then it probably is. Thank you guys very much for watching. I do all kinds of these videos if you're interested. Scam graphics cards, power supplies, we got some phones, lots of crazy stuff. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Have a wonderful day.